Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Alicia from Alicia Be Creative, and in today's tutorial we are going to be creating a 4th of July inspired tumbler. So we are taking this cup way back to the very first tumbler tutorial that I did on this channel, and we are going to be doing a double V split in all glitter. So of course everything that I talk about will be listed and linked in the description below, as well as a brand new discount code from Glitter Makes It. We're going to be using some colors out of their 4th of July pack, but you can save a little bit of extra money ordering this pack or any of their other glitters with my link that is in the description and my discount code. So feel free to check that out. Also in that description box, you'll find all of the links to my social media, as well as a link to my Facebook group, LBC Community, which I'd love to have you join. We have a lot of fun over there doing some tutorials, some lives, a lot of chit chat and just fun goes on in that group, but I'd love to see you over there. Lastly, please give this video a huge thumbs up, as well as subscribe to my channel. It really does help me out a lot. Okay, I feel like that's definitely more than enough for us. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so we are starting with a 24-ounce plump from the Seal Magnolia. I absolutely love this style cup. I have sanded and prepped this cup with just a flat white spray paint. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to be creating the double V split for my design. So I'm using just blue painter's tape. This is just always typically what I use, easiest to work with. And you're gonna notice, as I have stated before, a quick and easy little trick to make sure that you don't pull up your paint is if you rub the painter's tape either against your clothing or the surface that you're working on, as long as it's not paper, that will come up, and rubbing that against that surface, and that helps to take away the stickiness so that you don't pull up your paint when you have to remove the tape later. So with our original V-split in the first video that I created for this YouTube channel, we only really focused on the one side. On this cup, I wanted to make sure that there was a very prominent V-style shape on both sides of this cup because I wanted both sides of the cup to be special. I knew the glitters that I was going to be using were kind of big and bold, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to showcase them appropriately. Okay, now that my cup has been completely taped off in the way that I like it, I'm going to take this outside and I'm going to spray paint it. So I'm using two Rustoleum colors today, Candy Red and Ink Blue. These are the two colors that I'm going to be using. That will be the base paint for my red and blue ombre on the front of this cup. I've let my cup sit until the paint is completely dry, and now we're going to be moving into glittering this front half of the cup. So again, this is going to be the front side of my cup where my decal will go. So I'm going to do the ombre on this side of the cup first. So I'm using two colors today from Peachy Olive Glitters. I'm using 1776, which is the red, and Liberty, which is the blue color. Both of these were in one of their more recent Peachy palette boxes. And so I'm going to be applying these glitter colors using the epoxy method. So I'm putting just a little bit of epoxy, drizzling that onto the front side of the cup. And I'm actually going to use less than 1 ml to cover this front side of the cup. The two glitter colors that I'm using are pretty fine cut glitters, so I don't have to worry about needing a little extra to get it to stick, but I am going to make sure that this front half of my cup is completely covered, each area, there's no dry spots, so that when I go to apply my glitter, I don't have to worry about glitter not sticking to my cup. Now you could apply your ombre colors or your glitter colors using Mod Podge. I just prefer to use the epoxy method just because I feel like I get better coverage this way, and for me it's just easier for me to work with and use. So the first color I'm going in with is that Liberty, and just like I've done and showed you before, we're going to create the ombre, but starting with the bottom, we are going to glitter the bottom half of the tumbler that will be completely blue. We haven't yet moved up into that midsection yet, but we are going to start to gently tap a little bit of that blue glitter upward. Now, we haven't gotten full coverage on this bottom portion. We just have kind of very light, sparse coverage, if you will, especially up towards that middle section. Now, as I'm going to go in with my 1776, which is the red, I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to flip my cup downward, getting full coverage around the rim, which will be completely red, and then sparser coverage as I move down the cup. So as I tilt my cup downward at more of a 45-degree angle, I'm going to make sure that I am sprinkling just a little bit into that blue section where the two colors meet to make sure that I get a beautiful ombre in the center. As I've said before, this is not something that you'll be able to master the first time you try it. I have taken lots and lots of practice and times in order to get an ombre that I am happy with. And so oftentimes I will either scrap the cup entirely and start over if I'm not happy with it, or I will just choose to go over that section and area and either do one color or maybe go back over and try and fix the ombre that I've created. But again, it's okay if you're not getting this on the first few tries. It is something that you definitely have to practice a lot with in order to get just right. Okay, so I put both my colors away and now I'm just going to brush off any of the excess glitter. It looks like I did get a little bit of epoxy on the white area there, but I'm just going to wipe that off with my gloved hand and move into the back side of the tumbler that we are going to be glittering with a chunky glitter. So again, the exact same method that I used before. I'm going to just put just a little bit of epoxy on this back side, and because I'm using chunkier glitter, I am going to make sure that I am applying just a little bit more epoxy than I did for the front half of the tumbler. And this is just to make sure that my glitter sticks, because I know that it is a chunkier style glitter and sometimes the chunky glitter doesn't always stick unless I have a little bit more epoxy. You'll also notice that I am not going to glitter the bottom yet at this point in time because that will actually be a completely different color. So we are using Glitter Makes It 4th of July pack, and what I'm going to pull out of there is the Born on the 4th of July color that came in this pack. It is a red, white, and blue chunky mix, and this is actually what I'm going to be using to put on the back side of my cup. Now, I am no pro at pouring glitter from a bag, so I am going to grab a medicine cup just to control where my glitter goes and to make sure that I don't get any of this chunkier glitter on the front side of the cup. Now, I shouldn't have to worry about that if I have full coverage on that front side, but just to be safe and to have better control, I'm going to put this inside of a medicine cup to pour. So I'm just going to put full coverage of this chunky mix on the back side of my cup. I'm not really worried about the base paint being white because there's already white in the glitter. You're not really going to be able to tell whether that's white from the cup or if that's white from the glitter that is part of this mix. So I'm going to make sure I have full coverage, go back in with anything that I may have missed in some areas, especially at the top and along the tape line. And then normally I'd use a piece of parchment paper, but because I hadn't prepared myself for this, I'm just using one of the gloves that I used to pat down some of the chunky glitter and make sure that nothing is sticking up. So again, I don't want any issues with glitter sticking up during the epoxying process. So I want to make sure that I am patting down this glitter and making sure that nothing's sticking up so that when I do go to epoxy, I don't have to do a whole lot of sanding, which again, you guys know, not my favorite thing to do in the tumbler process. Now that I'm happy with my glitter, I'm going to tap off any excess glitter and then I'm actually going to remove the tape lines now. So because I'm going to be letting this dry, I don't want the epoxy to dry onto the tape because that would be a pain in the butt to have to try and remove, and I'd probably be lifting some glitter. So I'm going to remove the tape, that way I can set this aside to dry. So this is going to take probably about 1 to 2 hours to dry. Again, I used fast set epoxy. This is Alumilite's Quick Coat. That's what I actually use to apply my glitter epoxy method. So I'm going to let this dry on my turner, not turning or spinning, but just on my turner, just to let it dry and then move into sealing these couple of colors. Okay, so my cup has been drying for a couple of hours. I'm now going to take CC DIY's Quick Coat. This is their water-based urethane sealer. It's what I use to seal in my glitter. You could also use either polyacrylic or just a clear spray paint, but I do feel that the Quick Coat from CC DIY really does do the trick and make sure that none of my glitter is going to move when I go to epoxy. So you'll notice that I'm starting one section at a time, starting on the ombre side, and what I'm doing here is just applying a little bit of the Quick Coat and using my silicone tool or brush to brush on and thin out the liquid that I'm putting onto the cup. So after I am done with that, I'll just wipe off my silicone tool and move to the back side and just very carefully and gently make sure I am getting full coverage of that quick coat. Again, you don't need a whole lot of this quick coat, really just a thin amount on your tumbler to really seal in the glitter, and this is just going to help me make sure that I don't have any lifting or any migrating of my glitter into sections and areas that I do not want them to be. So you'll notice I haven't yet glittered the white section nor the bottom. I wanted to make sure that before I moved into those that I sealed both sides of this tumbler. That way I ran less of a risk of the next colors mixing into either of those two sides. So I'm gonna let this spin for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then we'll move into glittering the white sections. All right, my quick coat has officially dried. I've waited 45 minutes to make sure everything is dry to the touch, and now we're gonna move into glittering the white sections. So I'm just taking some Mod Podge in the medicine cup and a flat paintbrush, and I'm going to be glittering this white V section. So I couldn't decide whether I wanted to do this section white or what, but I'm glad that I decided to use Salty Beach from Peachy Olive Glitters. It is like a silver white colored glitter. It came in the same pack that the 1776 and Liberty colors came in. So it really does add some just extra like gorgeousness to this cup, if you will. I really do love how this silver glitter looks against the red, white, and blue custom mix on the back and then the red and blue ombre on the front. So I'm just going to be applying Mod Podge in small sections to get full coverage of glitter on this V split area. I didn't base coat the V split. I really didn't want to have to fight with tape, honestly. And because there was already white within the silver glitter, I figured that you wouldn't really be able to tell if the color of the cup was white or if it was just the white glitter from, or the white from the glitter mix. So I'm gonna just finish doing this V sectioned area and tap off and brush off any of the excess. The one thing about working with Mod Podge is it does dry quickly, so you'll see that I did have to go in a couple times to touch up some areas just to make sure that I did completely cover that V area. Obviously, I am going to be using some vinyl lines to cover up those areas, but I didn't want any of the white cup peeking through nonetheless. So I'm going to put away the Salty Beach from Peachy Olive Glitters, and then we'll move into glittering the bottom. So we're going to do the same thing we did with the V area. We are going to do to the bottom. I'm just going to be using Hedwig from Peachy Olive Glitters. Again, this came in that same pack that most of these red, white, and blue colors came from. So I'm going to be just glittering the bottom. I do wish that I would have spray painted the bottom first, so maybe done a coat of epoxy and re-spray painted it, because you'll notice I did get a little bit of blue overspray from when I did the ombre on the one side, but I think that more or less I'm really the only one who can tell. So it's kind of me just being nitpicky. So we're gonna let this dry and then we'll move into epoxy. So I have sealed with Quick Coat the Salty Beach area and the Hedwig white on the bottom, and then I waited 45 minutes to an hour before I went in with 2 coats of Amazing Quick Coat from Alumilite to make sure this cup was completely sealed. So now that it's dry, I'm going to be going in with sanding blocks to clean up the rim as well as sand any of the sides that may have some raised glitter. So the 2 coats of the Amazing Quick Coat really did do the trick, and I really have minimal sanding to do, which for me is a godsend because we all know how much I dislike sanding. So I'm going in with my sanding blocks. I'm using an 80 grit for the top, and then I have a 180 grit for the bottom. So I just sanded the top rim as you just saw, just to make sure I expose some of that stainless seal, which will create our final seal with our final coats of epoxy. And now I'm just gently going to use my less abrasive sanding block for the bottom. And the reason why I'm using a larger grit, or a smaller grit I should say, sanding block on that bottom section is because I want to make sure that I don't sand through too far into the glitter. Now I do have 2 coats and the likelihood that I do that is not very likely, but just to be safe, I didn't have a whole lot of sanding on the bottom to do anyway, so I'm really just sanding until smooth. So I'm going to continue to sand, and then I will take this upstairs to wash it and then move into decals. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys kind of quickly how I am going to print my images and decals for this cup. So I purchased 2 images from a couple Etsy shops, which I'll list and link in the description below. So we're going to work with the Freedom and Firework image. So we've already uploaded it into Cricut Design Space. We're now going to pull it into our canvas. And once we do that, we'll wait for it to load, as Cricut always likes to be slow when I'm trying to record things, of course. We're going to upload that into our canvas, and then we are going to resize the decal to 3.5 inches. So I typically like to go between 3 and 3.5 inches for any 20 to 24 ounce cup. It's large enough to be seen, but also small enough that I'm not going to run into any issues when I go to apply this decal on the cup using the hinge method. So I've duplicated the image, and now with that second duplication, I'm actually going to change this to a cut image and change it to white. So I'm going to be printing a white vinyl backing for this decal. And the reason is because I'm going to be using clear sticker paper, and I want to make sure that the image can be seen on the darker colored surface. So now that I have that completely ready to go, I'm just going to click Make It, and then we'll get both of these items cut and then printed. So now let's hop on over how we're going to do the vinyl stripes. Okay, so to print the leopard image, we're actually going to switch over to Google Docs. So I don't like to use Cricut Design Space because I know I'm printing this image on printable vinyl, and in Cricut Design Space, when you print an image, it only gives you a very small section that you can work with, and I want to be able to print this image edge to edge. So I'm going to go into the page setup settings, and I'm going to change it to landscape format, and then I'm going to make all of the margins 0. I'm also going to change the paper to size A4, and again, this is just to make sure that the image that I put on here is going to print edge to edge of the paper, or at least as close to it as I can get it. So now I'm just going to upload the image from my computer. So this is the leopard print file that I purchased off of Etsy. You could also use a Google image one if you can find one. I just happened to like this pattern. It matched my decal, so I went with this. So you'll notice I have a lot of excess white vinyl or white area here. So I'm going to just use the crop tool, and I'm going to resize it to crop in all of that white excess and just make sure that, again, I can get this as close to the edge on all 4 sides as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cropping this image here before I go to print it. So I have just a regular inkjet printer. I don't have a laser printer, but I'm going to be printing this image specifically on printable vinyl, which I will show you which vinyls that I use, which printable vinyl and which clear sticker paper that I use, as well as I will link those. So I'm going to go ahead and resize this so that it fits the entire canvas or the entire sheet. So I'm going to pull that image until it's just over the edges before I go in to print this. So I'm going to go ahead and print this, and then we will go ahead and move into showing you what those 2 items that I use to print these images on are. Before we move into how we're going to finish up this cup, I wanted to show you the 2 items that I use, the printable vinyl sticker paper as well as the clear sticker paper. So both I will list and link in the description below, so feel free to check those out and pick some up, and then we will move on to doing our decals. Okay, so I have printed all of the decals that I need, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to apply these decals to this cup. So this is already sanded and it's been washed off. And so what I'm going to be doing first is using the white vinyl, which is going to be the backing to the Freedom and Fireworks image. And I'm just going to weed this and then get this placed on the cup. The biggest thing for this, when you print your image, an image on white vinyl to match your image, you do want to make sure that it matches up with your image in the correct way. So you'll see that I am matching up based on the look of my white vinyl image and my SVG Freedom and Firework image, just to make sure that I am putting this on the cup correctly. Nothing would be worse than applying this to the cup and it being completely upside down or off-centered or just doesn't look right under that image. So now I'm just going to apply the white vinyl onto my cup using some transfer tape. I just have some transfer tape that I picked up from Amazon. It's nothing special. It's not the best transfer tape, but it does still get the job done. So I'm going to apply the white vinyl here to this cup, making sure though before I do so that my cup is straight on my cup arm here. This is what I love to use to apply my decals because I do feel like it gives me a better chance of getting my decals on straight. We both know, or we all know, that I definitely don't like to measure things. I'm more of an eyeballing person because, again, it is a handmade product and I am not going to measure every single thing because I'd measure it and then probably still put it on wrong. So I'm going to apply the white vinyl here and smooth this down. And then once it's completely smoothed and free of any air bubbles, I'll go ahead and remove the transfer tape. And then we'll move into applying the Freedom and Firework image on top. Now for the Freedom and Firework image, I'm going to just use a pair of scissors to cut around this image. Again, this is sticker paper. It's clear sticker paper, so it is going to be transparent, which is why I have that white backing on the cup first to make sure that we can see this image on top of that red background. So the one thing about sticker paper that you need to remember is you don't need to seal this. So I didn't seal this image. It is a sticker paper and I just printed right on top of it, and I have never had any issues with any of the ink smearing or anything like that. Now again, I have an inkjet printer. I am not sure if there's any difference with a laser printer. So I'm going to go ahead and just eyeball this as I normally do and just apply this Freedom and Firework image directly on top of the white vinyl, trying very closely to match up the corners and the edges to make sure that it is on completely straight and directly on that white vinyl. So now that I'm satisfied with my image, I'm going to then move on to applying my printable vinyl leopard print. So this is on printable vinyl paper. So it's white paper that you then just print on. It is a little bit thinner than traditional vinyl that you could buy. I have seen people also print directly on like just a white vinyl. So like a white vinyl that you'd buy from like the Cricut brand or the Sizer brand. I have seen people do that. I haven't tried that, and maybe that's something I'll try in a future tutorial, but I just decided to use the printable vinyl paper that I already had just to get this leopard print image onto some vinyl. So I'm just going to apply my vinyl strips here onto those sectioned areas. I haven't trimmed anything yet. I like to apply all of the vinyl first because I want to make sure, especially for this V area on the back, that I don't have any gaps. So sometimes if I end up using my X-Acto knife to cut the excess early, I cut too much and then it's kind of hard to be able to put, you know, a little piece of printable vinyl or vinyl, whatever you're using, in that spot without having to just use an entire strip again. So I've got all 4 strips on there, and so now I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm just going to very carefully cut the excess printable vinyl off the bottom edge and the top edge, and then you'll see me flip this over and do the same for the back. So now that this is completely done as far as vinyl, I'm not going to do anything with it other than put it on the turner, and we're going to be applying 1 coat of epoxy to apply a little bit more glitter to this before we can do our final coats. But I'm not going to do anything like sealing, because if I do use something like a sealer, I do run the risk of my inks running and blurring and fogging up my image, and I definitely don't want that. So I'm going to just put this right on the turner, and we will move into applying our last bits of glitter and then get into our final coats. All right, so this is back on the turner, and we are just going to apply 20 mLs of quick coat from Alumilite, and this is their fast set again that I like to use. And so we're just going to apply this layer of epoxy on here so that we can put some of the stars from Glitter Makes It on top of this area. So we're only going to put the stars on the Salty Beach or the silver and white area. We're not going to put it anywhere else. I just felt like that section just needed a little something to give it just a little extra red, white, and blue vibes, you know? So I'm just going to go ahead and finish applying this 20 mLs on here. I'll then take my torch when I am done applying this epoxy and just lightly go over the cup. Again, this is just to make sure that I am popping any bubbles, any micro bubbles that I may have gotten while mixing my epoxy, because I do tend to be a very fast mixer. So I'm just going to pop the bubbles with my torch, being careful that I don't get too close to my cup because I do not want to burn my epoxy. And then we'll go ahead and we will start to apply the stars. So I've just put the stars in a little medicine cup that you can't quite see in the shot here, and I'm only going to apply them in that silver salty beach section a little bit at a time, kind of trying to spread them out, but make sure that it's kind of a full area. So the glitter here that we have, the stars rather, are from Glitter Makes It, and this is their Old Glory star. So it was part of their 4th of July pack, and I just wanted to be able to add that to this cup because I really just feel like it brings it all together. So now I'm just taking a weeding tool that I have and making sure that none of my stars have migrated into the 2 V split sections. I want to make sure that it only stays in that silver section, and because some of my stars did clump up, I'm also going to use this little tool here just to separate them and pull them apart and pull off any ones that I don't feel like I need there. I didn't apply a whole lot of stars here, but definitely enough to be able to cover up a little bit of that salty beach section and kind of make it look like the stars were part of the glitter to begin with. So I'm just going to finish messing around with this before I let this spin on the turner for 4 to 5 hours. And then after that has completely cured, I will go in with my final coats of epoxy. So my final coats of epoxy were about 2 final coats, each 30 mLs. I did have a little bit excess, so I did create a little cute straw topper to go with this cup when I do post it on my Etsy shop. I hope that you loved today's video. If you did, please feel free to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys!